started. If you are coloring with us tonight, I encourage you guys to turn on your camera real quick and show us what you're going to be working on during the event. Great. Yay.
Dígame a toda la gente lo que está. Ya está, venga.
So,
sorry, that's my mom. My mom doesn't know how to put mute on her.
Well, that's why we have tech people. We can
Never have to apologize for your mother.
Yeah.
Sales embarrassed. But we love her.
It's totally fine. So I'm going to introduce you, Melly. If you want to wave your hand so everyone can see where you are in the screen, and I'll put you on the main screen. So I am going to screen share those. Share. There we go. All right. So Melly Trochez is a Los Angeles-based artist. She obtained her BFA from California State University of Fullerton and later a master's degree in marital and family therapy with an emphasis in art therapy. Melly's work pulls influences from Mexican muralism, religious paintings, and cultural experiences. Her work focuses heavily on portraiture, including self-portraiture, and in it, she has explored the dialogue between identity, culture, particularly Latina culture, and experiences including, but certainly not limited to, community, immigration, social commentary, ritual, and tradition. Melly has exhibited in galleries and museums throughout California, including DeYoung Museum in San Francisco, Riverside Museum of Art in Riverside, California, the Pitt Gallery, and ACE 121 galleries, and most recently at a group show in the Mission Culture Center for Latino Arts in San Francisco. Her work is also a part of AEIVA's collection, which is the piece that you see here on the screen, which we're really excited to have. Melly currently lives and works in Los Angeles, where in addition to creating her own art, she works as an art therapist. So welcome, Melly. I'm really excited to have you. So why don't we go ahead and get started and tell us a little bit how you got into art and what your influences are.
Okay. Hello, everyone. If from time to time I might be looking down because I'm also coloring, so forgive me, I apologize ahead of time. How I got into art. I think part of it was growing up, I was extremely shy child. You know, I was very introverted, very curious, very always observing, and just wanting to connect. You know, I was very close to my family and always have been, but it was those interactions that I would have outside of my family that would create all sorts of anxiety and, you know, just paranoia of having to like socialize. Like it would always make me really uncomfortable socializing with the unknown, with strangers, with someone outside of like my nuclear bubble. So it was always something very curious to me of why I was like that. And I wanted to understand that better and express myself because I had all these, you know, ideas and creativity, but I was just trying to find an outlet. So my first idea was, I think like in my preteens that I told my parents I wanted to go to acting school. And it was very ironic because I was so shy, but I also wanted to like, you know, break out of that mold. So I pushed them and they finally sent me to acting school. And I did that for a little while. And it really helped me get out of that, my comfort zone and push me to be a little more confident and engage with people. And not taking myself so seriously because I was so shy. But it just wasn't like the art form. The performance was great, but it wasn't the art form that really spoke to me. So then after that, when I entered like my early high school years, I tried dance. I joined the dance teams in school, still very interested in performance. But it wasn't until I took art class in my sophomore year in high school that I realized, okay, this is something that is really speaking to me, and I felt like safe and I felt like at home, and it gave me like a language that I didn't really know I had before. And I think part of it too was that I was sort of forced to be in this AP art class in my sophomore year, and I didn't have any fundamentals. Like I took art here and there, but it was, very, just very basic. And so going into this class where there was a lot of serious artists who have been, students who have been taking art throughout their early childhood and just really talented. So it wasn't until I was in that experience, in that environment, that really pushed me to kind of observe what was happening around me and look for ways to improve my skill. And so I picked it up really fast, and I really found a place in that class to have a voice and to feel like a sense of purpose. So that was like my early experiences where I realized, okay, this has to be something I need to pursue more seriously because I feel like myself here. So I would say possibly early high school is where I realized that I needed to look into this as a career. And it just took off from there. I don't know if you want me to get into the art therapy part or
What led you to this style of painting and mixed media? Because for those of you at home who haven't seen this piece in real life, it has 3-dimensional elements to it, so it's not just a painting.
Yes, thank you. I think because I was always very interested in knowing and understanding and wanting to kind of dissect things further, I always had an interest in psychology and really trying to break things down and understand like the purpose, what was the precursor, why, always having these why questions. So that really led me to trying to ask those questions through my art. And this was before I even discovered that psychology, art therapy was even an option. But my early paintings were much about that, really getting into understanding the psychology behind why things are the way they are, why I am the way I am, why my family is the way they are. So I'll quickly go back to that painting, if you can, to the first slide. And I'll just talk a little bit about that one, and then I'll go into the painting. So the reason this painting is very important, and I'm very honored that you have it in your collection. Thank you for inviting me to talk and reacquaint with the painting. But the reason I did it was because in my early 20s, I was doing a lot of work with children with autism. And I had this dilemma in my head of how to bridge, my desire, my nature to want to nurture a person's individualistic personality, and then also, the behavioral side where I'm working in an environment where they want to encourage me to teach this child to be sociable and to be like other children, like normal, quote unquote children. So I had this child I was working with, and this is an actual event that happened where she really, really loved ladybugs, and all she wanted to do was play with ladybugs every time we went out to the yard. And when I was with her, I was being told by my, my managers, my supervisors, you need to get her to integrate with other children, to play. But in my head, I'm thinking, well, she really, really likes ladybugs. Is it that important to be connecting with her peers, and I understood their reasoning, and so it was this conflict that I had. And so this painting was about that experience and my ongoing experience working with children with autism, because they're a very special, unique population that really inspired a lot of my early work and continue to inspire it. But this painting had a lot to do with that, just really trying to understand, where is my place, my purpose, and working with these children, and how can I nurture them at the same time, guide them to fit, in society. So I rather play with ladybugs. It's me just kind of giving in and just pouring a bunch of ladybugs to the child so she can engage in them.
This is so wonderful, and then in that it crosses that line between the art and kind of your art side, but also your jobs as an art therapist side as well, kind of. So I think it's a really unique thing to have in our collection. So is this you in the painting as the main the adult in the painting, or is it someone else? Because I know you figure a lot in your paintings.
Yeah, primarily in the beginning, I did use myself a lot as reference, just because I was available, my own, as a model, and plus this was a painting based on an experience that I had, so I felt like it was really important for me to kind of process that experience with myself in it and with this child, because it was such a deep experience that kind of resonated with me for a while. And it was one of those paintings that had a hybrid of influences, because I was dreaming about this dialogue I was having in my head. And so part of it was based on like dreams and based on reality and based on this child. So it was a layered influence. And which is why I do the layering too, because it's important for me to capture that experience, like the collage element.
So it has that dimensionality to it when you're conceiving of the painting, and then also in the end product. That's
right.
It's really cool. So do you want me to move on to the next slide?
Sure. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So we had talked a little bit about influences and portraiture. Tell us a little bit about this one. Is this one a self-portrait, or what's going on with this one, and what drew you specifically to use angels as part of a series?
Okay, yes. Again, this is all dating back to before I discovered the art therapy, the psychology, but always just very interested and curious, because I myself, struggled a lot with mental illness in my early 20s. I had a lot of depression, anxiety, just a lot of, like, I think a lot of the childhood fears I had were kind of just manifesting even more as an adult. So I just started creating this series of angels to kind of help self-soothe and give myself this this way of coping with this like severe anxiety I had, like social anxiety. I didn't even want to, be around people I didn't know. So in this painting, it's one of the first, I think it's one of the first angels I created. I just kind of imagined what my angel would look like if I had, this imaginary angel that would come to me and kind of, touch my hair at night, help me sleep, because I had a lot of insomnia. It was pretty bad, that during that period of time. I had a lot of diary entries, so a lot of times I would incorporate that in my paintings. So like on the pillow tag, I think it's one of my diary entries. I don't remember what it says, it's so long ago, but I just think it's really interesting that the angel now looks a lot like a hybrid of my mother and myself when I look at it now. But yeah, it was something I had to do to kind of just help me get through that time.
And so you were doing this one when you were in college, or?
Yeah, I would say like early college. I was maybe like, late teens, early 20s. I was doing these. Yeah, this was probably from like maybe 23, around 23, 24.
There'll be a test later. I'm just kidding.
Yes, multiple tests.
So imagery. So this is another, the halo I've noticed has come up some in your artwork as well. Can you walk us through because your paintings are so rich in different types of imagery. Where do you draw your influences for them?
Okay. Well, this one is Turn Lotus. So this one came a little bit later. So the one you showed before, the Guardian Angel, that's 2006. And this one's 2007, 2008. Yeah, about 2008. So this is when, these are like the more mature angels, and I'm starting to really get into more like studying Zen Buddhism and just really reading a lot of Eastern philosophy and finding a lot of peace in that. I wouldn't say I'm a religious person, but I did find a lot of places to kind of find refuge in Eastern philosophy. So that's kind of where the references come from, and just really trying to, the halos are just marking like demarkers for like the place I want it to be. Like this is like the other entity, you know, like the holy place to be, or the more enlightened, you know. So in this one, I'm like on the ground praying or begging or whatever, you know, she's doing, to kind of like plead to the more enlightened self to kind of help guide her to that place. And again, this is like, you know, during this time where I'm just trying to really figure things out, trying to really understand like what is happening to, you know, my psyche, and wanting to get to a place of like peace and understanding, and also predating getting into like grad school for art therapy. So this was all kind of leading there, and it's in this weird manifestation way.
Was there any, well, first off, do you want me to go to the next slide before I ask my next question?
Yeah, whatever you have in mind. I don't know what your question is.
Yeah, so my question is, was what made you decide to go into art therapy? And I know well, yeah, so what made you decide to go into art therapy?
Okay, well, and this is part of like a series that is around that time too, 2008, Humble Me. And these are all paintings that led me to needing some kind of like solution, because, you know, I'm working it out. I'm painting all these conflicts I'm having, and I'm trying to get to a place of like self-acceptance, self-understanding, just purpose, you know. And so I just continued to paint and paint and paint, and I just still felt like I couldn't really get a grasp of like what I wanted. So it wasn't until it kind of fell on my lap, you know, the idea of bridging the two professions, like psychology and therapy, to not only help myself, but then to continue to do the work I was doing before, but in a more meaningful way with other people. So it just made sense to me. When I heard about it, I didn't know. It was kind of someone who just brought it to my attention. I had no idea that the profession existed, but it really wasn't something I needed to think about, because it just felt so perfect, the two fitting together. So like in this painting, again, it's just like the idea of, you know, what we think and what we do, or what we know and how we act, you know, just this conflict, this self-conflict, just working it out through paintings. And that's what art therapy is, essentially.
So I noticed one of the boxers has a halo and the other one does not. What's the reasoning behind that?
I think, well, part of it was when I first started really getting more into my art and professionally, you know, exhibiting and being around the politics of art, you know, I felt like it got a little heavy for me at times, because I was so introverted and wasn't very exposed to like this other part of art making. You know, I didn't know that, like, you know, art is great, art is beautiful to make, but, you know, going into like art communities and art world can be very dark at times. So I felt like in some instances I had to create like this pseudo self. So like Aiko on the left and then Melly on the right, you know, it was like this battle of like, is this something that you really want? Is this something that that feels good for your, you know, your essence, you know? So it was a struggle, because just dealing with different personalities and different galleries that sometimes really challenge your you know, your philosophies or even your value system. Like for instance, like I wrote the word hood on this painting because I was working with a gallery that would request things like, you know, we want to see a more Latin side of you, or more street side of you, or the hood side of you. So I was like, well, I'm not any of those things. I'm not, well, I am Latina, but I'm not hood. I'm not, you know, I didn't consider myself hood, or what does that even mean to be hood or street? So I thought maybe, well, do I just like contextualize it by putting the word in it? Does that make it hood? You know, so it was more having those kind of internal battles too. Now, you know, dealing with a different level of you know, communities.
Yeah, so a lot of external pressure playing into it.
Yes, for sure.
So this one is the one that you wanted us to use for the graphic for this evening. I really love it. Can you tell us more about her, and also kind of, you mentioned Latina, and I know Latina culture and experience plays a big part in your artwork moving towards today. Can you speak more to that?
Sure. So this is a painting that was part of the beginning of my new series that deals with the complexities of beauty standards and Latino culture. And this is a painting of my friend Bertha. And it's really important to me because Bertha is one of those friends that I have that really has these very inspiring, discourses, and has a lot to say, and very bright woman. And speaking with her, it's inspired so many bodies of work, in this same realm. But I really wanted to capture her because she really has a lot of similarities to my upbringing and things that we can resonate on as far as what messages we heard, how we want to destigmatize certain aspects of like our culture and expectations that we have as women and of women of color. And so I painted her reflecting on herself, her beauty, and what does it mean, how does it feel to have these different pressures from different places, from our mothers, from our friends, from men, from society, from pop culture, of what we're supposed to look like. So she's kind of just reflecting on that. And then on her sweater, I've juxtaposed a bunch of different current movements, things that I personally believe in and support. And then on the other side of that, there's a patch of Pablo Escobar. And part of that is because I just find it very interesting, how in pop culture we've completely, we have all these great movements happening at the same time, and like the Me Too, and then we also have like this whole narco traficante, series exploding on TV, and I'm guilty of it too. It's very entertaining to watch, and I get stuck watching it, and I'm like, how is it that we can glamorize this when so many people have a lot of tragedy from it too? But it's just really interesting to me how there's just so much out there, for us to digest. And that's kind of what her sweater is about. There's just movement after movement after movement after, fads. Yeah.
So down towards the bottom, you have a different style for the greenery than you do towards the top. Is that like, was that that really drew my eye, because I thought that was a really interesting kind of break in the composition. So what's the I like looking at kind of like the outside of the compositions as well. So was there a reason for that, or?
More so that I'm just very fascinated by mixed media. There's times I want to have something fully illustrated, and there's times I want it to be very loose. The part behind her that more toward the bottom is fabric, and then as you go up, it becomes more like pastel, mixed media with paint. So I love the play the two have, because it's just like, again, very layered and unexpected. So I think it just kind of goes with the content too.
That's really great. So here, this one's really interesting. Can you tell us more about it?
Okay, so this was probably the first one in the series of beauty standards and our culture. This is Bertha again. I didn't capture her, the same way I captured in the last one, but it's her. And what happened here was her and I got into this really, very intense, deep dialogue about how, how is it that we feel pretty, like what is it that makes you pretty? And in our culture, in our homes, we were told you have to have straight hair, light skin, and certain things that we believe or we were told that are beautiful. So we both shared experiences of growing up where our mothers would actually iron our hair. And, it was really funny to us as we were talking about it because, I thought I was the only one. And I know my mom shared stories of people in her family that did it too. But, they didn't have flat irons, or maybe they did. I didn't have one. But, it was a very funny story that I completely forgot about. And we both bonded on that experience of ironing the hair. So the title of this painting is I Just Want to Be Pretty. And so that was, as soon as she said it, I said, okay, we need to stop and we need to impromptu make a little photo session. And we just did it in the moment. And that's kind of a lot where I get my inspiration. It's just like these really beautiful conversations that just spontaneously happen and then capturing the moment.
That's really great. And it seems like you did really capture the essence of it as well in that moment, that like it feels like to me that this is something I walked in on that you guys would just do. So really great. So is this part of the same series as well?
This is part of the beauty series. This one is definitely part of that. Again, just, talking to different friends of mine, family. And this is my friend Christine to the left, and my brother's girlfriend, my friend Rihanna to the right. And this is something that all of us have experienced, all women of color have talked about, this idea of when you're little, this like, a lot of us have had this like experience where our parents are, well, primarily our mothers are very kind of obsessive about putting sunscreen on our skin. And in this case, I remember putting on these different creams because they were believed to make your skin lighter. And I think on it actually says more beautiful skin, and I didn't know, I wasn't conscious of this, growing up, but it was just very interesting to me later on reflecting on it. Like, oh yeah, I remember putting that skin lightener on my face. And then the Manzanilla shampoo in the back was something we all used growing up to make our hair naturally lighter. It's kind of like Sun-In or something. I don't know how it works, but it makes your hair lighter. And I remember using that too. So this painting was about that, kind of paying homage to these different rituals that we did as young girls. We might not have been aware of why we were doing it, but we definitely were part of that process.
And then this is definitely something I can relate to as well with the hair straightener. So this one's also part of the same series?
Let me see. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes. This one is to, yes. This is another conversation. This is my friend Roxy. She's another very good friend and also an art therapist. I'm sorry, not art therapist, another therapist. But we had this conversation about how, when her hair is not flat, there's times where she's been told maybe by her partner or someone, is she okay? Are you sick? Are you feeling okay? Because her hair's not done. And so that really struck a chord with me because I've had that happen too, like, oh, your hair isn't on point or something's wrong. And my hair is very naturally, it's pretty curly and frizzy at times, And so the flat iron has been a big part of my life, and it wasn't something that I really thought about. It was kind of something you do naturally. You just flat iron your hair. But the more I hear these stories, it becomes this other thing, where it's like almost like this like holy thing that we're holding, that it's so precious to us because it defines like how others perceive us. And so it's really interesting to me that we place so much on this device that makes our hair straight.
So I know I can see that we have some questions coming up in the chat. So as we, Rachel, do you want to read some of those, or do those come just to me?
Sure. So the first question from Lisa Mani is, what is the significance of the woman on the back of the mirror, perhaps an ideal visage of beauty?
Oh, okay, on the Bertha painting. I think so. I think, yeah, it's like this very clean, makeup done, and hard edge. It's like it's a very set image. Yes, I would say so. Like what you have an image that is very done up and ready. So I would say so.
I did get one. This one's more of a comment. I love how your work speaks to the pressures of conforming to white Eurocentric beauty ideals. So definitely an experience for sure that has come across. So was there another question or?
There was a comment from Tina saying that her friends used to use like irons to straighten their hair before flat irons. So that is a shared experience here as well.
They used what? Like iron?
Clothes irons.
Oh, yes.
Their hair. And then we have another question. In the flat iron piece, what is the tattoo on her arm?
On this one? This current painting?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
okay.
I think so.
Oh,
yeah.
These are just their actual tattoos. These are my friends. These are their real tattoos. So, I want to pay homage to what they also define as their identity. These are choices they've made to put on their body. So I felt like it would only make sense to include it. Like this is a painting. In this painting, Roxy actually has that tattoo, and then the next image, moving forward, also is Fabi's tattoo.
And those are gorgeous tattoos. So we'll just kind of keep going. And if anyone has a question, you're welcome to jump in.
I have a question that kind of plays on what Hilda said. And so, Melly, you talked about, growing up as a child and sort of the pressures of conforming to like mainstream beauty standards, which basically means like, which would basically be white beauty standards. But then you also talked about this experience that you had with galleries where there was pressure to be more street or more, even like you could even just say ethnic. And I'm wondering like how do you reconcile that? And is that a common experience? Like, do you find it feels like a no-win situation? And I'm curious if that's something that you encountered a lot in Los Angeles with galleries.
Yes and no. I personally think that the more I dive into the understanding of like the motivations behind it, of where, like the less I can be, I lost that anger, when we're certain situations with certain conflicts, because I feel like the more you understand, the more you can get to what is the precursor, the more you can come to an understanding and acceptance. So like for the instance with the galleries, I can come to more of an understanding now, where back then I was just struggling in so many levels with myself that I just wasn't there. So I probably wouldn't be able to paint that painting today of the boxers, because that fight has been more resolved at this point in my life. But back then it was something that was just like, I'm trying to figure out myself, and now you're telling me to be something else, so it was a lot more of a conflict then than it is now. But so it all always comes back to like the understanding of the motivation. And in this piece, here, I see a question, but I don't have it on the slides. The wash your hands. Oh, okay. So should I talk about that?
Sure.
So Michael threw in a question about the wash your hands painting that is not in the slides. Is that the question?
I think he may have sent it to me.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe I'll say a way to. So this painting again is, you know, me kind of having this position with my mother, and where she's offering me this holy grail of a flat iron, because, you know, to this day she will still put stuff in my hair when I come over. Just for my brother's birthday a couple days ago, she came in with the hair gel, and, you know, oh, it's like kind of frizzy, helps you with the frizz. And, you know, I don't get upset. You know, I actually find it really enduring that it's still something really, really powerful for her to have me have my hair like that. So the flat iron is a part of that symbol of, like, I accept my mother, I love my mother, and I don't have any judgment for her having these kind of, you know, needs to see my hair nice.
So I actually, before I pulled this one over into the shared screen, I noticed that you started using a little bit more textiles in your artwork as we go through these slide progressions. So what were you drawn specifically to that medium? And I'll click through a couple of more slides, and then we can come back to the wash your hands one. But oops. So you, why did you start shifting to more different type pieces?
Oh, I see. Like the more sculptural pieces.
Yes.
I think it's always been in the work. I do think it's becoming more of like 3-dimensional as time goes on. But I think it's just that richness and that layering of just really getting into things and finding new layers. And like for this one, for example, this was a painting about the experience of a therapist. And that has been like the most enriching experience of my life, as far as like the growth that I've experienced in myself, and hearing other people's pain and suffering and their resiliency and growth themselves. And it's just been such a deep, parallel process, we call it in therapy, that I don't think a flat surface would capture that. You know, it was something that I really needed to get in there and sew, and, you know, hurt myself with the needles by sewing. And it had to be something more visceral than something flat. It wouldn't have done it for me to really capture that experience of what it means to be a therapist. So I think that was kind of what moves it more in that direction.
So I had I'll go past that. This one right here too. This one really stood out to me. What drew you to do something just completely cloth, and in particular this particular image?
Okay, yeah. Again, I think just trying to feel the experience as I'm making the work, and I wanted to have it to be a little more, you know, paint is easier for me to manipulate, where like sewing is a little more challenging and unforgiving. You know, it takes more time and in some instances. And with this one, it's part of my series of like social justice and homage to, you know, the laborer. So I wanted to feel like labor, you know, because I don't necessarily like sewing, but I think it's important in some cases to capture that idea of stitching and mending and just, you know, kind of being part of like this this hand labor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Let me here. Why don't we go ahead and pull over this one? You guys can see that one. Let me see if I can get it bigger.
Oh, the wash your hands.
Yes.
Okay. I haven't seen this one in a long time, but I love this painting. It's actually one of my cousin's daughters that I painted, and this one was, again, kind of like a dialogue I had with a gallery that was kind of asking me to do things that I didn't feel comfortable with, and the idea of galleries not being open to everybody, and I'm against that. I feel like galleries should be for everybody, and art should be accessible to everyone. So this painting was about that, you know, just idea of like cutting up money. Like it's not about the money, but to wash your hands. You know, sometimes children are more intuitive or more instinctual than adults are. So that's what that piece is about. I love that painting, though. Thank you for bringing it back.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And also just kind of the name fitting for
Today.
yeah, today, yeah. So I know we only have 10 minutes, so we'll kind of we have a few slides left to go through, so we'll kind of go through those. But you guys, if you have any more questions, be sure to put them into the chat or unmute yourself. You're more than welcome to interrupt and ask. But so going back, is this kind of sculptural, textile, it's not a painting per se, but artwork that goes into your more social justice series, correct?
Yes, this one is a homage to the plight of immigrants. You know, my parents are immigrants, and a lot of my family and friends have this experience, and so just really paying homage to, you know, even the reasoning of wanting to come to, you know, the America, and the painting is titled La Bestia, which is a train that a lot of immigrants will jump on, you know, in Central America and attempt to come to Mexico, and it's dangerous and a lot of, you know, tragedies occur. So it's just more of a homage to that whole entire journey.
What really influenced you to start going in this direction with your art? Was there like a particular incident or just in general?
I mean, it's always been, you know, very, very personal, very close to home. I think the more I did work, because I did a lot of work with undocumented youth and youth that were, you know, the Dreamers Act, going through, you know, the process and helping them get, you know, status here so they can stay, and hearing their traumas and their reasoning for coming to the U.S. was very, very hard and moving, that I just felt like I needed to do work to really capture that and give that a space, you know. And this painting is about the incarceration of our brown and Black people, and this is particularly personal to my cousin who's in prison, and paying homage to him and his experiences, still trying to fight for an appeal in court and not having been given, you know, his constitutional rights. So it's along that line.
And Christina, we have another question in the chat.
Oh, yes.
From Danielle, and she's curious to hear what training and education goes into becoming an art therapist and what a workday looks like in the art therapy profession.
Well, to the training piece, there are two in Southern California that I know of, two schools. There's LMU, Loyola Marymount University, which is one of the main, you know, the forefathers of, or you know, the first school we had in Southern California. And then there's Phillips that has an art therapy program. It is a master's program, so you do need to have a bachelor's in psychology or art. You know, you have to have an art background, but the psychology, there's some courses you need to take, but definitely a master's level program, and you get an MFT in some cases, you know, marital and family therapist. So it's a dual degree program. You're not just doing art therapy, you're also trained to do, you know, regular psychotherapy. And so you got to, you know, go through that whole process of going through the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and it all depends on what setting you want. You can do private practice, you can do, you know, community mental health. So it depends on the hours and the workload, depends on what practice you go into, like what placement, what work placement.
And then what is I think the second part of her question was, what does a work day look like for an art therapist?
That's the part where it depends on your I guess, your placement. Like if you decide to go into like a school-based program, or Department of Mental Health is a lot harder and busier. You know, you're working sometimes 10-hour shifts. But if you go into private practice, you know, it might be a lot lighter, and then you can kind of pick your schedule. So it just depends. Just like any therapist or any psychologist, you know, it really just depends on what setting you go into that will kind of dictate your daily routine.
And what about you? Like, how do you use art as part of your practice?
Or like art therapy or art?
Yeah, well, or both.
I think they both inform each other. You know, I strongly believe in the arts as healing, so I encourage it to everybody. Like the coloring, I love this idea of coloring on Zoom. I think it in my sessions with clients, you know, I can't force art therapy. It's up to them if they want to do art or not. But if they did want to do art therapy, I really see, you know, the growth. And you know, we kind of look at their art from the beginning of therapy to the end of therapy as a body of work. So we kind of hold it all in the client file, and then you look at it together as a body of work. And I look at it more like I would an exhibition, like the early work, the mid work, and then the termination work. So it's pretty powerful when you have the visual to kind of guide you through what you've been doing, all the work you've done.
That's really cool. So we only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to make sure that if it's okay with you, just kind of click through some of the slides that we have left. And while we do this, why don't you tell us a little bit about this particular exhibition?
The rituals.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a 2-person show that I did with my fiance, who's also an artist, Leo Igarte. And we titled the work Rituals because, you know, his work is very more like how would I describe it? It's physiological, psychodynamic even. You know, there's like so many layers of his work. It's like mystical, it's spiritual. And then my work was supposed to focus on the beauty ritual. So we felt like they both kind of tied into each other. And so we did that 2-person show together, which was beginning of last year. It ended, I think, 2019, January. And this show was the last show I was in San Francisco at the Cultural Institute. What is it called? Cultural Institute in San Francisco. And that was based on a show that Martina Ayala curated, and she's an amazing curator who's been putting together these great exhibits that have multidisciplines. You know, she has performance art, she has spoken word, she has a little bit of everything, and it's beautiful how she brings community together.
And then this one here, whoops. So these were all part of the same exhibition?
This one with all the different works. This is part of a project. Which one?
the candles. I just realized that we have a little bit of a delay.
Candles. Yeah. Well, this was another collaboration I did with Leo Igarte from. We did for the Autry, the Southwest Museum. It was for an altar we did, paying homage to Black and Brown have been killed by the police. And I just felt like it was important to include it in this presentation because of what we just had happen again. You know, it just feels like it keeps going and going no matter how much attention is given to excessive force by police. So I wanted to pay a little homage to George Floyd and including that.
Absolutely. So, and I think and thank you for putting that in. I know that's a topic that's sitting on everyone's minds at the moment. So we're at the end of the slideshow, as well as at the end of our time. I am going to stop screen share real quick. And then as we do at the end of most of these, I did not get very far with mine, but I'm going to switch back into gallery view. And if you wouldn't mind, if turning on your cameras and showing us kind of how far you got, and put it up there, and we'll be sure to do a screenshot of it a little bit later. Oh, these are wonderful. Oh, thanks, guys. Oh, these are great. So thank you so much, Melly, for joining us. And if you guys, if you will share it on your colorings and any thoughts that you guys had on Instagram, you can tag us. Please do at AEIVA UAB, AEIVA UAB, and we will put that in the chat as well. And then Melly, do you want to share, oh, thank you, Dana, your Instagram handle as well so they can tag you?
Sure. It's my name, Melly Trochez, so MELLY TROCHEZ. And if you have any questions or want any resources for mental health services, please reach out and I can send you that. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And we hope to see you all again here soon. And so thanks, everyone. We hope to see you back for our Inside the Arts as well as our coloring nights. So thanks, guys, and thank you, Melly.
Thank you.
Good night.